let's talk about the show tonight, Keith. What can we
Mhm.
expect with Dateline?
Well, this is your friend Shane Bishop and I, but mostly Shane, um, has been working on this for a long time, since right back at the beginning, and has developed. Shane has a a list of people who are on the inside and who are very good sources about what's happened here in Idaho. So we're familiar with a good deal of the evidence that the state will bring against Bryan Kohberger. His attorney is not speaking yet, but we have, a lot of this material that the prosecution will rely on, I think, to try him. I don't know, I don't know. We can't say that we have it all, but we have a lot of it. And we can almost have a timeline of his movements and the movements of the killer, whether it was him or not, in the days, hours, minutes leading up to the murder and afterwards.
You also have a couple of interviews from people that we haven't heard from before.
We have. I mean, we've heard from some of the people who met Bryan Kohberger early on, as soon as he moved to Pullman, Washington. Um, and he went to a pool party, for example, and there was an incident at the pool party which was just kind of strange and unsettling for the people who were there. Um, he just he worried a couple of the women who were by the pool wearing bikinis, and he was just a little leering. I think they tried to brush him off, and one of them tried to get her husband involved, but he paid. No, he just seemed not to be aware of social cues.
Yeah.
So there was that, and then one of the other people there then ran into him later on a hike, and was puzzled by the fact that he was walking alone into the night when everybody else was getting out of this area that they were hiking in because it was nighttime. And then we discover, of course, that he was somebody who loved the nighttime and was out at night all the time,
Hmm. Interesting.
walking around, looking around.
Right. Well, that was I think one of the points his defense attorneys made early on, that he was out driving looking at the stars at night, the night of the murders.
Yes, and there, and that might be an answer that satisfies. I don't know, but you have to have some comeback to the fact that it's glaringly obvious that he spent a great deal of time alone in the dark during his time there.
Tell me about this video that of a car that may have been his, or a car that looked similar to his, that you all have obtained.
Well, it's a car that the authorities believe was his, the white Elantra that we've heard so much about. You see the video. It's really quite remarkable video. It shows the period leading up to the murders, just before this car kind of approaches. And by the way, the camera is on a neighboring house. You can't quite see 1122 from this house, but you can see the movements of the car as it's heading down into this kind of controlled area where 1122 is. Um, and it's going around and around. And every 3 minutes or so, the car will kind of come around and go away again, and then come back and then go away again, as if somebody is, casing the house or is trying to make up his mind about something. Certainly, the authorities believe it was the killer. They are accusing Bryan Kohberger of being that person. But then what we see is the car pulls in to what would have to be 1122 King Road and disappears like it's parked. 13 minutes later, it reappears, going hell bent for leather around the corner and out of sight, and isn't seen again. So the authorities are pretty convinced that this is a video of the killer in his car making up his mind. The 13 minutes where the car is not visible to the camera is when the murders are occurring, and then afterwards you see the car drive away again.
Mm. And we're going to see that tonight.
We will see it. Yes.
Wow. What's been the biggest thing that stuck out to you, Keith, as you've been preparing this episode versus previous reporting, which we've heard, and this story has been highly covered across the spectrum, but
Yes.
what's been your biggest takeaway or insight?
Well, that video is pretty extraordinary, and it tells you a lot. it also weighs pretty heavily as a piece of evidence, I think. A good deal of the evidence is circumstantial. Uh, there is the DNA on the knife sheath, but also a slight problem with that in that the FBI broke its own rules in order to be able to test that DNA with a familial DNA site that normally is not available to them. You have to sign a form saying you're okay with law enforcement looking into your DNA profile if you want to be on one of these sites. But the FBI went to a site where people do not sign that waiver, and it's a bigger site. They have, that gives them the opportunity to whittle down who the person would be that they're looking for, and it succeeded. But they're supposedly prevented by their own regulations from entering that website. Nevertheless, they did. So
Yeah.
we'll be able to use that too. But
Right. The defense has made some filings about that and whether
sure.
they legally got it or obtained it. Another thing the defense has said recently is talking about Bryan Kohberger's autism diagnosis and his mental capabilities as far as one reason why they wanted to strike the death penalty off the table. Do you get
Mhm.
much into his mental state of mind or potential, um, you know, his
Really not.
state of mind?
Yeah, not much more than we. I think you would be hard pressed to find a psychiatrist who's prepared to examine Goldberger over a television set or just from the limited amount we know. The defense says he has autism, and perhaps that's so. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, the suggestion was that he is OCD also, and that may have explained some of his behaviors. Um, the judge has already ruled that this doesn't really, it's not going to impact any possibility of a death penalty.
Yeah. Yeah, it will be such a fascinating trial to watch here in just a couple of months. I know that all eyes are going to be on Boise as this goes. It could probably the longest trial in Idaho history, they're
Good,
saying.
could be. I mean, there are lots of issues that will have to be gone into in depth. Yeah.
Right. All right, Keith, tonight, Dateline, you can watch it. It starts at 9 o'clock Eastern and Pacific time. And for those of us in the middle of the country, it starts at 8 o'clock, 2 hours, all new Dateline with Keith. And then you can
Right.
find it on Peacock starting Saturday. And then it comes out on the podcast next week.
You're extremely to say those things. Thank you, Nate.
Yes. Anything you want to add?
No, I just there's some extraordinary reporting, and I do not take credit for it in this report, and it certainly is worth watching.